Arisu, the Alice of the title. He is an avid gamer, he is very clever, but he is also a dropout from society, much to the dismay of his stern father and hard-working brother. He is clearly still harboring some sad trauma over the death of his mother, and he finds solace in his friends Karabi and Chota, whom he arranged to meet up with outside the bustling Shibuya station after leaving his house during an argument at home. The friends have to text each other. The messages show up on screen just to locate one another at the Shibuya crossing. Arisu, Karabi, and Chota's messing around by playing at the center of the crossing earns them the attention of the authorities, and all three took shelter in a toilet cubicle inside the Shibuya station. While running, they saw a daytime firework which is actually a meteor hurling towards Tokyo. No one sets off fireworks in the daytime. Suddenly, the lights went out in the toilet, which is the moment the meteorite impact took place in Tokyo. At this moment, some people died, and some entered a coma. At this moment when the lights went out, they entered the Borderland. A place between life and death with judgment or games to separate out who lives and who dies. Those closer to the impact center entered Borderland first. When they emerged, the entirety of Tokyo including Shibuya Crossing, one of the most famous busy junctions in the world, is empty and the trio begin to poke around. All their phones are dead. Nobody is around. The telltale sign of they are in Borderland is that the coffee is still hot with steam coming out from it. This is the sign that as if a snapshot is taken and time stops at that moment. Behind them, a building lights up to inform them that a game will commence in a moment, and an arrow directs them to the arena where it will take place. With no better ideas, they followed the arrow to the Game Master, GM, building, where they picked up new smartphones with face recognition software that relay details of the game to the players, who also included the experienced Shibuki Sayori and a newbie high school female student who is only present to make the players and audience to be aware of the stakes. Those stakes are life-threatening. Once the game was underway, it has a border that instantly kills any player who crosses it with a laser. A playing card, the 3 of clubs, denotes the difficulty of the game, which is called dead or alive. The rules are simple. In a series of rooms, and within a shortening time limit, the players must select the correct door out of 2 choices, marked live or die. There is a 2-minute timer on the first room, which eventually starts flooding with gas. Here is where the no-name high school girl is offered as a sacrifice to prove to the players that choosing the wrong door means instant death, though it is saying that she was manipulated into choosing by Shibuki, who believes this is a game of sacrifices. But Arisu quickly figures it out as a game of logic. Using his memory of the car parked outside, he is able to figure out the rough shape and dimensions of the building, using that to inform his decisions. He leads the group through the right door each time, and despite Chota getting caught by the flames on the way out, they all made it out alive. Arisu's intelligence is depicted as a sort of superpower, but you can really follow the train of logic here, and the smart use of a diagram that let the audience see the decision-making process. Since the game was ranked as the 3 of clubs, that gives the winners a 3-day visa. To explain what that means, a random man stumbles into the alleyway to declare that he's dropping out of the game since it never ends no matter how much you clear. His visa had expired and he was lasered to death by a laser shooting from the sky. Instantly, we have our stakes set so high that the characters must continue playing. Right on cue, we see lights of the laser crop up all over Tokyo, shooting from the sky and ending the lives of the players whose visas had expired, as the camera cuts to a woman who is Usagi, the female lead who stood on a rooftop surveying the city. Alice in Borderland Episode 2 starts with Usagi, who is a mountain climber that made a promise to her father that she is going to survive. The camera then transits to Shibuki. To her, everyone disappeared 3 days ago, yet for the 3 men, Arisu, Chota, and Karabi, the disappearance happened only yesterday. The group were discussing different theories about Borderland. Arisu found some rotting vegetables in a car while out and about, so the timelines are obviously different for everyone as vegetables do not rot within 1 day. The explanation is that those who were nearer to the meteorite impact center entered into a coma first after the impact and entered the Borderland to play the games earlier. Shibuki was in the center of the impact, hence she arrived in Borderland 2 days earlier. The virtual reality and EMP theories do not work as Borderland is a place between real life and death. Either way, Chota need to see a doctor to seek treatment for his burn, so Karabi suggested that Arisu and him play the next game together in order to meet more people and potentially try to find a doctor. While Arisu and Karabi were away, Shivuki tried to bribe Chota so that Chota will protect Shivuki during the next game. Both Shivuki and Chota had flashback about their past. Shivuki worked extremely hard to climb up the corporate ladder, and Chota and his mother were in a cult. The next game includes Usagi, Karabi, and Arisu. There was a total of 13 participants this time. The difficulty this time is the 5 of spades. A man named Naitobe explained what the cards meant. The suits denote the type of game, clubs are a team battle, diamonds test wits, spades are physical test, and hearts, the worst category, force you to play with people's emotions. The number obviously denotes difficulty. The game this time around is tag, and the goal is to touch 2 buttons hidden in one of the apartments in the housing block where the game will take place while avoiding the tagger. After 20 minutes, a time bomb hidden in the apartment building will explode if the buttons were not pressed. To everyone's surprise, the tagger was wearing a horse mask and was carrying a submachine gun. The tagger goes around to mercilessly shoots down the players. Naitobe has apparently played 5 times, but this will be his last game as he was shot by the tagger. The anime had similar scenes of this game. A new smart-looking character with long, silvery hair spent much of the game observing from a vantage point. Usagi wants to keep herself to herself. But once the players begin being killed off one by the tagger. Usagi responded to Arisu's instructions when he determines that the tagger's mask limits his field of vision and that they can exploit that weakness to avoid and defeat the tagger. A strong-looking player named Aguni and his partner teamed up with Karabi to physically take the tagger down while Arisu and Usagi search for the buttons. Both Arisu and Long Silver Hair figured out that the buttons were in the apartment that the tagger fired at from a distance as the tagger was trying to keep the players away from the door. When they entered the apartment, they were attacked by another tagger and were separated. Arisu made it into the room with the buttons, but it requires 2 people to push the 2 separate buttons at the same time. Arisu shouted for help. As Aguni fought one tagger and Arisu fought the other, Usagi made her way into the room in the nick of time, and both Arisu and her were able to clear the game with only a second remaining. The tagger in the room was revealed to be a woman wearing a collar that detonates once she lost the game. The taggers had no choice but to play the game. The episode ended with Karabi finding a walkie-talkie on Aguni's compatriot. The voice on the walkie-talkie made an announcement that the answer is in our hands now and implores everyone to get back to the beach. The beach will be explained in later episodes. Alice in Borderland Episode 3 starts with the group back together, pondering about the beach as their next promising lead. The group cannot follow up on it just yet since Chota and Shivuki's visas were about to expire, so they needed to win a game to renew their visas. Arisu, meanwhile, was still struggling with the guilt of the tagger's death, which he saddened him. When Karabi took a slight detour to pick up an engagement ring from his former place of work, Chota scolded him because he and Shivuki were running out of time to renew their visas. The next game was designated a 7 of Hearts and was designed to test their relationship. This game, which took place at the indoor botanical gardens, was much more terrible than the games that we had watched so far, as it seems it is only possible for one person to win it. As part of the rules, everyone must wear a pair of goggles. One person was designated a wolf and the other 3 people were the sheep. A sheep found by a wolf becomes the next wolf, and so on and so forth, passing the role of the wolf back and forth. Whoever is the wolf at the end wins, and all the sheep's collars explode. A wolf catches a sheep by making eye contact with it, so the idea was to become the wolf and then run away and hide. Chota becomes the first wolf, but Shivuki quickly steals the position from him and ran away. Karabi chased Shivuki and they fought, while Arisu implored them to help him outsmart the game rather than just give in to the rules of this terrible heart card game. Arisu managed to become the wolf by calling out to Karabi. Karabi started to tear into Arisu verbally after he realized what Arisu had done. Arisu was still struggling with his many other anxieties and insecurities, and not to mention the seemingly inevitable prospect of losing his friends in this game. We watched some flashbacks of Arisu's relationship with his father and his brother Hajime, and to a bit more of the Arisu, Chota, and Karabi friendship, which this game is obviously designed to test. With time running out, Arisu offered to drop out, since his friends are all that matter to him. He was the wolf, but when he ran out into the open, he cannot find anyone to pass the role of the wolf to. Nobody responded to him on the radio, and we see Chota dragged Shivuki with his hand over her mouth, into the foliage of some plants. They were all hiding from him and sacrificing themselves for him. The timer counted down to 0, and the collars exploded, Karabi's right in front of Arisu. Alice in Borderland just killed off 3 of its 4 main characters in just the 3rd episode, which is a major twist to the storyline. This episode is a very touching story of true friendship. Will you sacrifice yourself for your friend? After the incredibly sad ending of the previous episode, Arisu was struggling. In fact, Usagi, while out wringing a rabbit's neck, found him collapsed in the middle of the road, waiting to die. There is a flashback about Usagi's key relationship with her father, a fellow climber who was accused of faking his widely publicized no-oxygen tank climbs and subsequently got himself killed trying to attempt the same feat of a no-oxygen tank climb again. The loss of her father obviously deeply affected Usagi, so she knows how Arisu felt when he said that he just wants to die as he is saddened by his friend's death. She reasoned that since they are going to die at some point, they might as well do their best to honor the dead and their sacrifice. Arisu's visa was due to expire, so he needed to play another game, and Usagi wants to repay Arisu for saving her life during the episode 2 tag game, so they attempted the next challenge together, which began on a bus in an underground highway. A team of 3 men was already on the bus, they had cleared many games together. This game is called Distance and is rated a 4 of clubs. The objective is to reach a goal or a safe endpoint. One of the 3 men, Takuma, has a severely injured leg and cannot run, so he sadly asked his friends to leave him behind. The distance tracker on the smartphone keeps on tracking the miles. The group reached a replenishment station with cups of water which they are all too hesitant to drink from, so Usagi shared her little bottle of water with Arisu and he shared it with everyone else. Further on, they came face to face with a panther that pursues them. Season, one of the 3 men was eaten, leaving behind only the last man from the group of 3. The group came across an old Royal Enfield motorcycle with a diesel engine, which should still run despite the suspected EMP detonation since it does not have any electrical circuits. Arisu pushed the bike back to the start point and used the diesel in it to fuel up the bus and to rescue Takuma. Arisu is motivated by the loss of his 3 friends to save Takuma at all cost. There should be just enough time to get back to the bus, fuel it up and then drive all the way to the destination, and Usagi and the other man continued the run to scout ahead. Having made it to what they believe was the end point at the end of the tunnel, Usagi and the man sat down and had a chat about their families until they were interrupted by jets of water bursting through the metal wall at the end of the tunnel. More water began to leak in, they ran back towards the starting point. The man fell and was engulfed by the flood waters. Usagi was saved in the nick of time by Arisu, who dragged her onto the fast-moving bus which was toppled over by the flood water. Everyone on the bus were knocked out when the bus toppled over. When everyone woke up, they saw the graffiti on the side of the bus that reads goal. Their distance counters had been counting how far away from the goal they were getting. They were safe at 0. The bus was the goal all along. With their visas renewed, Arisu and Usagi decided to head to the beach next. Arisu and Usagi tried to find the beach in the highly urbanized Tokyo, but to no avail. Arisu, being the gentleman, initially refused to share the tent with Usagi until he was surrounded by insects. Eventually, he had no choice but to join Usagi in the tent since sleep deprivation will be a big danger to them during the games. Usagi taught Arisu how to hunt, which Arisu learned quickly since he can relate it to the principles of an online game that he likes. They also continue to monitor real-world card games looking for clues about the beach, and Arisu hits on the idea of looking out for people wearing locker keys, like the ones that Agani and his compatriot were wearing during the game of tag in the second episode. They both followed cars with people with the locker keys and gave chase, somehow keeping pace with their cars on foot and following them to a destination that looks very much like a seaside resort, and they were knocked out and taken prisoners. They were taken to a seaside resort named The Beach, and its leader is named Hatter as he previously sold hats in real life. It also introduces the goal of the beach, which is to collect all the numbered playing cards and use them to send one person back to the normal world. While Hatter knew that this was a lie to unite everyone, he was not far from the truth, as the Joker at the end of Season 2 gave all remaining players who beat the face cards in the games a choice to go back to real life. Hence, the cards are the goal, but it is to beat the cards at the games and not to collect the cards. Hatter and his executive board would like Arisu and Usagi to help collect the missing cards. The beach is a self-sufficient community with its own resources and rules, including a mandate on swimwear and a zero-tolerance trader policy. If Arisu and Usagi do not want to help, they will be killed as traitors. With no other choice, Arisu and Usagi joined up, and the Seven of Hearts card that Arisu won was a missing card that made him and Usagi eligible for a promotion. The beach is a party hotspot where everything is allowed and even encouraged. When the games started, everyone gathered and cheered the members who will be playing in the games on. Agani from episode 2 is the leader of the militant faction who controls the beach's weapons and sits on Hatter's executive board. Silverhair occupies a seat on that executive board, along with a partnership with Koina, a woman who keeps an unlit cigarette in her mouth as a quit-smoking aid. We were shown montages of various games taking place and how the members from the beach cooperate to work together to win the games. Arisu joined Anne, who is an executive member, for a game called Lightbulb with the participants who stood in gradually rising water. The objective is to determine which switch, A, B, or C, turns on a light bulb in an adjoining room, but you only get one opportunity to test a switch with the door open. Arisu was able to figure out the right solution using logical reasoning. Anne is impressed with Arisu and he passed the test to join the executive board. Arisu returned to the beach when Agani ordered his men to take Usagi away, and Hatter himself was forced to intervene. During the executive meeting, Hatter announced that he will be participating in the next game, both to extend his visa and in the hope of locating the elusive Ten of Hearts. We get an ominous zoom in on Agani when Hatter said that he will be leaving his executives in charge during his absence. Hatter explained his backstory to Arisu, that he was the host at a gentleman's club. He believed that everyone revered him and will be happy to see him return to the real-life world as a hero. After experiencing life at the beach, Arisu and Usagi determined that life at the beach is not for them. Most of the residents at the beach were quite happy with the lifestyle they enjoyed and were quite loyal to the leader, Hatter. When Arisu found a container full of rotting corpses, it shows that Hatter was deadly serious about the death to the traitors rule. The character, Silverhair, whose name is Kaisuhiya, introduced himself to Arisu and Usagi. As suspected, he and Koina have an ulterior motive. Kaisuhiya was planning to steal all the playing cards and escape from the beach. The militants were due to take over any time now, and the beach will not be as nice once the militants have taken over. Naragi's psychopathy is on full display when Hatter's corpse returns from a failed game attempt. While intimidating all the other executives into electing Agani as the new leader at gunpoint, he starts beating Hatter's corpse with the butt of his rifle, which is very disrespectful, as the militants were now in charge. This gave Kaisuhiya the opportunity he needed. As there was a change in leadership, the new number one must know the code for the safe that contains the beach's collection of playing cards. Kaisuhiya, using his considerable deductive abilities, figured out the code is the 8055 or boss and sent Arisu to break into the safe during Agani's inauguration speech. Unfortunately, Arisu was caught in the act and Naragi viciously beats him unconscious. Arisu was held captive in a room until his visa expired. Meanwhile, Anne performs an autopsy on Hatter and discovers that Hatter was executed, and Kaizhiaya, having learned from Arisu's failure, realized that the real safe was behind a painting and successfully stole the playing cards. Usagi was not safe as Naragi wanted to attack her. Suddenly the lights went out. Kaizhiaya and Kuina discovered that a laser border had been erected around the beach. It had become a game arena. The next game was going to involve everyone to play for the 10 of Hearts card. When everyone assembled in the foyer, they found Momoko dead, having been stabbed in the chest. The game is called Witch Hunt. The objective was to figure out who killed Momoko within the next 2 hours and burn the murderer in the pyre outside the building. As the witch hunt game got underway, everything was becoming chaotic. The residents of the beach guessed that Momoko's best friend Asahi is the witch, but Usagi intervened, and Anne revealed to everyone that Hatter was murdered. The murder of Hatter rallied the other members of the beach against the militants, especially once they learned that the bullet used to kill Hatter is the same caliber as the ammo used by the militants. Once Anuji arrives, the militants begin butchering everyone and tossing the corpses into the fire to try to win the witch hunt game. Usagi attempted to find Arisu, and Anne tried to take a more scientific approach by dusting the murder weapon for fingerprints as she was a policewoman. She and Kuina were confronted and stopped by the psychotic, tattooed sword-wielding militant last boss, and Kuina stood her ground while Anne escaped. Elsewhere, Kaizhiaya confronted Naragi on the roof as he took sniper shots at the fleeing crowd below. Naragi had his flashback of being bullied in school, causing him to become violent. Last boss has a hard time with Kuina, who a flashback revealed that she was a transgender and left her house after a falling out with her martial art master father. Last boss also had his flashback being a struggling story writer who may have died from overwork. Meanwhile, Kaizhiaya burned Naragi with a homemade flamethrower. Usagi manages to rescue Arisu after a lot of searching. He reasoned that the witch was being forced to participate against her will, like the taggers earlier in episode 2. As Arisu pondered what he would do if he were the witch, we got a very brief flashback of Agani and Hatter as Agani stared sorrowfully into the pyre of burning bodies. Just as Arisu was speculating, Anne figured out the culprit, but before she could tell anyone, she was knocked unconscious. Arisu declared that he knows who the witch is. The episode ended on this cliffhanger. This last episode starts with the handheld footage of Momoko and Asahi in their early days in Borderland. Arisu confronts Agani and Agani begins to beat Arisu, so Usagi intervenes and accuses Agani of being the witch. He admits being the witch out of anguish and sadness, but Arisu knew that Agani was not the witch. In a flashback, in Hatter's hat shop, we saw that Agani and Hatter were good friends in real life. After Hatter's last game, Hatter and Agani visited the Gentleman's Club where Hatter used to host. Agani wanted to end the beach, knowing that they were losing control of Naragi and the militants. During the argument, Hatter pointed a gun at Agani and Agani shot Hatter. To Agani's sadness, Hatter's gun has no bullets in it, which meant that Hatter never wanted to hunt Agani, his good friend. Saddened by Hatter's death and blaming it on the beach, Agani wanted to kill everyone at the beach because Agani believed that the members of the beach were the ones who made Hatter crazy. That's why this is a game of hearts, to make a fool of everyone. Arisu determined that Momoko herself was the witch. Asahi brought the carnage to an end by declaring that she was the dealer of the game, which causes her to be instantly killed by a laser. Anne arrived right on time to reveal that the murder weapon had reverse grip fingerprints, which proved that Momoko stabbed herself. Considering these revelations, Arisu was finally able to talk some sense into Agani, but the severely burned Naragi arrived and began to open fire at the people. Agani sacrificed himself and took Naragi down. In the aftermath, everyone threw Momoka's body into the pyre and the game ended. The resort where the beach was burned to the ground. Arisu found Asahi's phone and watched the video that was shown at the start of this episode, in which Asahi and Momoka explained how they helped to organize the games, and how they secretly participated in them to influence things. The video depicted Momoka entering the lair of the dealers, bustling spires of monitors that surround the dealers in circular shape. Arisu and Usagi retraced the girls' steps from the video. They found the dealer's lair full of dead bodies. The dealers were executed after the players won the 10 of Hearts card game. Kazuya was already there with Kuina, having found his way there by deciphering the subway map he found earlier from the tagger's body in episode 2. As the monitors began to come to life for an emergency broadcast, Myra appeared. She informed the surviving players that they will be presented with face cards games starting the very next day as a present. Alice in Borderland ends with zeppelins flying over Tokyo, carrying the elusive face cards banner. Season 2 will be the battle with the face cards, and finally Joker reveals himself and the surviving players choose to snap out of their coma in the Borderland and wake up to return to the real world.